The sun beat down upon the dry, cracked earth of Canaan. A famine had descended like a shadow, harsh and unrelenting. The wells had dried, the crops had failed, and the animals groaned under the burden of hunger. The people whispered in the corners of their tents, speaking of moving to Egypt, chasing rain where they had heard the Nile still flowed strong and generous. In the midst of this tension, one man stood caught between the pain of the present and the promise of the past. His name was Isaac. He had inherited more than land and livestock from his father Abraham. He had inherited a promise. A sacred covenant spoken not by men but by the voice of the Almighty. A promise that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars, and that through them, the world would be blessed. But now, as he looked at the drought-stricken land, fear crept in. Could the God of his father still provide when the world seemed to be crumbling? Isaac packed his belongings and journeyed to Gerar, a land ruled by King Abimelek of the Philistines. Egypt tempted him, beckoned him with its abundance. But then it happened. A voice pierced the quiet of his heart. A voice that brought with it both trembling and comfort. Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and bless you. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars and will give them all these lands. Through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. It was not a suggestion. It was a divine directive. Isaac had to choose between the logic of survival and the leap of faith. Fear clawed at his mind. What if he stayed and his family perished? What if the famine consumed everything yet hope flickered? This was not just a dream or wishful thinking. It was God himself, speaking clearly, powerfully, and directly. Isaac chose to stay. The man who could have run to safety stood still in obedience. And something remarkable began to happen. In the middle of famine, in a land where nothing grew, Isaac planted crops. People must have laughed. They must have scoffed. Who plants seed into dust? But Isaac planted because he trusted. And in that same year, he reaped 100-fold. 100 times what he sowed. The impossible became reality. The God of Abraham had not forgotten. We need to pause here. Think of your own life. Think of the moments where fear shouted louder than faith. When everything around you told you to flee, to compromise, to take the easy way out. Isaac's story isn't just a relic of ancient history. It's a mirror. It reflects what can happen when we dare to trust God in the barren places of our lives. When we sow in faith, even in drought, God can produce a harvest that defies logic. Isaac's wealth increased, his herds multiplied, his influence spread, but with blessings often come battles. The Philistines became jealous. They began to sabotage him. One by one, they stopped up the wells that Abraham had dug, wells that sustained life in the desert. It was a subtle act of war, a slow suffocation. Then came the command from Abimelek, move away from us. You have become too powerful for us. Imagine being rejected not because you failed, but because you prospered. It's a sting that many people feel today. Jealousy doesn't just attack the wicked. It attacks the righteous who walk in obedience and see God's hand at work. Isaac could have fought. He could have defended what was rightfully his. But he chose peace. He moved to the valley of Gerar and reopened the wells of his father. As his men dug, fresh water flowed again. But no sooner did they celebrate than the herders of Gerar showed up. This water is ours. The arguments echoed through the valley. It was a test of resolve, of patience, of humility. Isaac named that well, Esek, meaning, dispute. So he moved and dug again. Once more, the water surged. And once more, the hostility followed. This well he named, Sitnah, which means, opposition. Still, he did not retaliate. He moved again and dug a third well. This time, no one quarreled. The ground gave life, and peace reigned. He named it, Rehoboth, saying, now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land. Pause again. Feel the weight of that journey. Rejection, conflict, persistence. Each time Isaac was pushed, he rose again. He moved forward. He didn't let bitterness take root. That's a lesson for us. In your workplace, in your family, in your church, when others push you down, when your faith becomes the target, will you keep digging? Will you move with grace or fight in pride? Isaac's choice brought him to a place of peace. Soon after, God appeared to him again. I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and increase your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. This wasn't just reassurance. It was identity. God was reminding Isaac who he was and who was with him. It's easy to forget in the noise of life. But sometimes, we need to be reminded, you are not alone. You are not abandoned. The promise still stands. Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. Worship followed the word, gratitude followed grace, and then something even more surprising happened. King Abimelek, the same man who had sent him away, came to visit. Not with soldiers, but with an offer. "We saw clearly that the Lord was with you," he said. "Let us make a treaty with you." The one who rejected Isaac now sought alliance. The tables had turned. The blessing of obedience was undeniable, and even enemies had to acknowledge it. Isaac prepared a feast. They ate together. They swore an oath of peace. And that same day, Isaac's servants came with news, "We've found water." Hope crowned the moment. Peace, provision, and purpose converged. The valley of battles had become a land of breakthrough. But there's a subplot that stirs deep emotion. Esau, Isaac's son, took wives from among the Hittites. The scripture says, they were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Even in blessing, there are burdens. No family is perfect, no story is without sorrow. But God's promise still moves forward, even through heartbreak. Friend, what is your famine today? Is it financial? Are you sowing into a career that feels fruitless? Are you struggling in a relationship where the wells seem dry and blocked with conflict? Do not flee to Egypt. Stay where God has called you. The blessing does not come through escape. It comes through obedience. You may feel like Isaac, digging wells only to face resistance. You may feel alone in the desert of your decisions. But take heart, keep digging, keep believing. The Rehoboth is coming, the space to flourish will be found. And even those who stood against you will one day recognize the hand of God upon your life. There is urgency in this message, not just because life is uncertain, but because obedience cannot be postponed. Delayed obedience is disobedience, and delayed faith is often swallowed by doubt. Act now, trust now, sow now. Let Isaac's story spark something deep within you. A fresh determination, a quiet courage, a bold faith. God does not abandon those who walk in his ways. He may lead you through valleys, but he will also lead you to victory. Do not give up. Your hundredfold harvest could be just beyond the next well. Do not surrender to bitterness. The peace treaty with your enemies might be just around the bend. And do not forget who you are. You are the child of a promise, a descendant of faith, and you are not alone. If this story has stirred your heart, if it's reminded you of God's goodness even in hardship, I invite you to take a step further. Subscribe to this channel, Shining Truths. Join a community that dives deep into the Word, finds light in the dark, and hope in every chapter. There are more stories to be told, more wells to be dug, and more promises to be fulfilled. Let's walk this journey together. Subscribe now, stay inspired, and keep believing.